Check. I feel very important today. I've given this presentation probably a dozen times, and this is the first time I've been mic'd up, and there was a camera guy here. So that's pretty awesome. It's going to go straight to my head. So my name is Bill Sofianos. I'm a sergeant with Clark County Sheriff. I'm currently the supervisor of our drug task force. Our unit is comprised of the Sheriff's Office, Vancouver Police, Washington State Patrol, Homeland Security, and we just focus on drug trafficking organizations that bring drugs into Clark County, in and through Clark County. So what we started to see a few years ago was this drug fentanyl that came into to Clark County. It kind of caught us by surprise, snuck up on us, and then over the last year, it's really become catastrophic. So we had a juvenile overdose and die earlier this year, and that is kind of what sparked this presentation. Also, you'll see here in a little bit, we found that cartels were starting to push some colored fentanyl that's very similar to candy. And the only reason we can really think is to attract kids. I mean, you'll see the pictures, it looks tasty, but the point is don't try it. So I'll just put that on the front end. That's the whole point of this. Don't try fentanyl, right? But it looks very tasty. So we wanted to get out ahead of it as well as we could, because back in the day, we did the whole say no to drugs, don't do drugs. You'll get addicted, it's bad for you, you'll lose your job, all these things. With fentanyl right now, what's happening is when people try the drug, they can die immediately. The first time they try it, they can die. So the experimental part really isn't there. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is and kind of what we're seeing.
My name is Dominic Tierno. Since I graduated high school in 2014, I've had the great honor of directing a number of documentary films about drugs and drug addiction. Our mission is to revolutionize drug education by telling real-life stories that motivate young people to make one of the most important decisions of their life, and that's the decision to not use drugs. 2020 was the worst year for drug overdose deaths that we have ever seen. In the beginning of summer in 2020, I came across this article. A 14-year-old kid from a town I grew up in had died from what appeared to be a drug overdose. He's a smart, funny guy who, like many kids, was struggling with some anxiety issues and decided that he would turn to drugs to see if he could help himself with that. What happened was he went and bought this pill, this Oxycontin pill, from a guy he had known, because he thought that pill might ease the pain of what he was going through mentally. Well, he didn't know it, but that Oxycontin pill wasn't a real Oxycontin pill. It was a fake pill. It looked just like the pill that he wanted to try, but instead of Oxycontin, it was made with fentanyl, a synthetic opioid known to be 50 to 100 times the strength of morphine. That one pill he took that night killed him almost instantly, and his mom found him dead in his bedroom the next morning. Before I can even finish that article, I'm scrolling through and I see another linked article. Not far away, around the same time, another 14-year-old dead from fentanyl. So then I go back to Google and I type in fentanyl deaths. I hit search, and then it all made sense. I saw another kid, and I saw high school students, college students, young adults, all recent, all over the country, all dead from fentanyl. And so I'm looking at that and I'm saying, these aren't just normal overdose deaths. These people think they're taking one drug and turns out they're being killed. Why have we not heard about this?
So I got to make sure I'm using the right one and not talking into this thing. I'm holding two things in my hand. So heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, prescription pills, these are all things that have been around a long time. They've enticed young adults, very, very addictive. Heroin, as another opioid, has always been really the most addictive drug that we've seen folks addicted to that have a very hard time getting off. Fentanyl came in, illicit fentanyl, because we'll talk a little bit about, we know fentanyl is a real thing. It's used in hospitals. It's very helpful. This is illicit fentanyl that's being manufactured and distributed for profit. So one of the biggest issues we're seeing is that this age group, 14 up to 24, initially is not seeing fentanyl as very dangerous. We're still looking at cocaine, even prescription pills, as it's more dangerous than fentanyl, when in reality, fentanyl really, when it comes to overdoses, is blowing the rest of those drugs out of the water. They can't even keep up. I'll show you some stats at the end of this about what we are seizing here in Clark County. Our task force, we go out and buy drugs. We use people to buy drugs. We watch drug deals every day. So we're very up on the drugs that are being sold here, the cost of the drugs, and you'll see what we have spent the majority of our time on the last year. And I'll give you a hint, it's fentanyl. It's literally taken up all our time, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So fentanyl, a real thing, not what we're discussing. This is what we're seeing here in Clark County. And really, this is all over the U.S. But so when it first came out, when illicit fentanyl showed up here, it was in the form of that 30 milligram counterfeit oxycodone pill there, the blue one in the middle. All of these pills are counterfeit. Some are shown with a real one next to it, but what's happened is our task force, as we seize medications, what we think are medications, they've all been counterfeit. They've all been fake. This Xanax here doesn't contain fentanyl, but it contains a very similar substance that is found in real Xanax, but it's being counterfeited. It's a cheaper drug, and they make more profit off of it. So really, all the what looks to be prescription pills that we're seizing in high quantities are fake. They're all fake. And so even kids that think they're taking a prescription pill is a fake pill, unless, of course, they are getting it straight out of, a parent's cabinet. But for the most part, what they're selling on the streets are fake. So this is what fentanyl popped up out here in Clark County as, these 30 milligram looking oxys. They're completely fake, but look 100% real. And then this is what we just started seizing here in Clark County. Portland metro area has seen this now for a little while, but this is the what's referred to as Skittles, the colorful fentanyl. The one thing that we can be thankful for, right now at least, is that they're still pressing them with the machines they use to make the fake oxycodone. So they're still marked like a 30 milligram oxycodone would be, but there's no prescription oxycodone multicolored like that. So these all contain fentanyl, and it's a certain amount of fentanyl with a bunch of binders. Fentanyl, unlike heroin, takes very, very little to overdose. We'll talk a little bit about how they're pressing these, how they're doing their mixtures, but there's very little fentanyl in these pills. It's primarily a bunch of binders, and now we're dealing with this powdered fentanyl. And again, doesn't it look happy? To me, it looks happy. To me, it's like a little, I can tell it's like a sour candy is kind of what it looks like to me. Users have told us that they actually try to make it even taste like candy. So what we are now starting to buy is this powder, And we just recently, last week, started seizing the colored ones here in Clark County. But again, DEA put out some flyers recently, DEA nationwide, and their pictures were from Portland. They're here. So that our area is kind of the example of, hey, here's what's going on. Anyone know, I might even have it in there, maybe not. Anyone know why our area kind of gets some of these drugs before the rest of the U.S.? Yeah, the freeway, I-5. It's awesome if you want to go to California, to Canada, but it's also awesome to move drugs up I-5. So we are constantly getting a lot of these drugs before a lot of the other areas in the U.S. So the very first class that I gave on this was to a group of Evergreen School District nurses. This was probably a month, 2 months ago, and they asked, is marijuana being laced with fentanyl? And at the time, we had not heard of any cases. So I said, not that I know of, not that I've seen or heard of. The very next day, we served a search warrant at a house. We're talking to a guy there who was a methamphetamine dealer, and he said, hey, I know a guy who's selling laced marijuana with fentanyl to high school students. And he wouldn't tell me who he was, but I'm thinking to myself, how is that a coincidence that I just got this question yesterday? So I do what anyone does that wants to know anything. I jump on Google, because it's pretty darn easy, and Google knows everything. And immediately I start coming across article after article across the U.S. of fentanyl-laced marijuana. Why do you think drug dealers want to lace marijuana with fentanyl? It's two completely different drugs. Why are they putting fentanyl on marijuana? Any thoughts? Huh? It's legal, it's easy to get, but what's the purpose of putting it on there? Addictive. So when it comes to drugs, fentanyl is here as far as addictiveness goes. If you can get someone hooked on this drug, then you own them. And they are a repeat customer because they have to be. We'll talk a little bit about, okay, well, but people die from this. I mean, they're killing their customers. And we'll talk kind of the difference between an addict and someone that's experimenting or using without knowing, that they're using. We out here in Clark County, like you said, marijuana is legal. I talked to the medical examiner, and they don't even put, if they do an autopsy, they don't even put marijuana. If marijuana is in someone's system, they don't really even put it in their autopsy report anymore. But it dawned on me that not just that's a problem, but just even law enforcement in general. If I go to an overdose, we have really kind of overlooked marijuana because marijuana, like you said, it's not a drug that we spend a lot of time on anymore. But the problem with that is we weren't looking for this either. So maybe it's out here, maybe we've overlooked it. The bottom line is, if it's happening other places in the state, then we're not unique. In the U.S. There's no doubt that it can and is likely happening, but we haven't seen it. The only thing I would say to that is, you're of age, purchase marijuana from a store. That's not going to be laced. The marijuana black market is very alive and well, so there's plenty of marijuana being sold outside of the stores. So how does someone get addicted to an opioid, heroin or fentanyl? How do you think it starts the majority of the time? Any thoughts? Surgeries. Yeah. I've seen you at one of these before. That's why you knew. Good job. No, that was good. Surgeries. So, like I said, we deal with drug addicts daily. We're talking to folks. I will tell you that 99% of addicts addicted to opioids, heroin, fentanyl, do not want to be addicted to it. Don't want to be addicted to it. And the vast majority say that's where it started. An injury, a legitimate prescription, pain prescription, and then at some point their prescription ran out, and purchasing real prescription pills now illegally is very difficult to do, and it's led to fentanyl from heroin. When the 30 milligram pills first came out, 2019, we found our first bag of them, probably 3,000 to 4,000, and we were like, wow, okay, and he had 30 pounds of meth and about 3,000 to 4,000 pills, and we're thinking, oh, he's selling a bunch of oxys. We had no idea it was fentanyl, and neither did the addicts. And what ended up happening was these folks that were out there wanting to just buy a 30 milligram oxy started overdosing on them. And they're like, wait a minute, I've used these pills for a long time. What's happened since is that they ask for fentanyl. They need it. The level of addiction from heroin to fentanyl is so strong that once you're using that stronger drug, you can't go back. So you'll see our seizures here in a bit. Our heroin seizures have almost dropped off the map. Fentanyl has completely just kind of done away with heroin. So this has been kind of the most common. Here's what we worry about when it comes to people overdosing and dying on this drug that either don't know what they're taking or don't kind of respect the danger of it, and it's the experimenters. It's either the ones that don't know what they're taking. Their buddy says, "Hey, I got this pill out of my parents' cabinet. Trust me, whatever." And that one pill can kill them. And what our unit has started to do a lot more of is homicide investigations. We're the drug task force. We like to go after drug dealers. What's happened? There's a crime called controlled substance homicide. If someone delivers a drug, sells a drug to someone, and then that person dies, they can be held criminally responsible for it. It's a homicide. We have gone to more than one overdose death that stemmed from one pill. One pill killed 2 different adults. Fairly confident at least one of them didn't know it was fentanyl that they were taking. So, and we'll talk a little bit about how that can happen. Why fentanyl? Heroin's been around forever, meth's been around forever. Why are these folks now pushing fentanyl? It's cheap, which leads to, and this right here, bam. Took me a while to learn how to make these things, but if you guys just saw, back up, here we go. I didn't need an applause or anything, I just kind of wanted you to notice what I did there. It's money, 100% money. And then you hit it on the head, right? So heroin and fentanyl are both opioids. Same type of drug classification, but to get just over a pound of heroin, you need about an acre of poppies. And then what do you got to do with it? You've got to cut it down. You've got to process it. You need people to do that. We haven't bought a pound of heroin out here in a long time, but when we were, last year probably, about $15,000 for a pound of heroin. When you look at what it costs to make these fentanyl pills, and you're going to go, nah, there ain't no way. No, it is. $800 of product can net some of these folks, and this is a little old, but almost $1 million, $800,000. When the pills first came, 2019, I don't have this answer up here. I always screw up. I ask a question. I got it behind me. 2019, what do you think one pill costs to buy? Throw out a crazy number. 20 bucks? 30 bucks. So $30 per pill. And then this is where I always screw up. What do you think they sell for now? Yeah, 3 to 5. That's actually, I don't know, a few weeks old now. We just bought pills the other day, $1.50 a pill. 120. So $30 a pill back in 2019 to just over $1 a pill now. Back then, 30 bucks for a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, I don't know how many, run around with a whole lot of money, but $1, $2 a pill, even $5 a pill, anyone can afford that. What do you think happened? Why did it go from 30 bucks down to $1 or $2 a pill? Huh? More people can get it because why? Because there's a lot out there. So if I was the only one out here with fentanyl for sale, I could name my price. What we have seen is that the market is flooded. Meth dealers now are meth and fentanyl dealers. Cocaine dealers are cocaine and fentanyl dealers. Everyone has fentanyl. It's dang near lost its value. It's incredible. So that's what we're buying them for now. This is what DEA put out a while back. And so when we talk about who do you think's overdosing on these? Who do you think's overdosing and dying on these? Is it the person that uses a lot of drugs, a lot of fentanyl, or is it the person that tried it once or twice, experimented, things like that? It's not the addict that's dying. Not that much. Why do you think that is? They build up a tolerance. Yeah, I know. She's good. They build up a tolerance, right? And number two, they understand how dangerous it is. When we go into a house on a search warrant, taped on the walls is Narcan. Taped on the walls. Number two, the majority of folks will use this drug in pairs so that one uses and then the other is there to Narcan them. Narcan we'll talk about, but it kind of is what counteracts the overdose for an opioid. So they're there for when they overdose to stop that overdose. So those are folks that are pretty experienced with it. They built up a tolerance. We started hearing people, they were telling us, I use 50 to 100 pills a day. And I'm like, there's no way you can use 50 to 100 pills a day. When one pill kills someone, no, they are. They're using that many pills a day. Very, very addicted people who have been using this over an amount of time. And so that's where the danger lies. It lies kind of twofold. One, I could have a friend, Fred we'll call him. I don't really know anyone named Fred. Well, a guy I work with, and he doesn't use this drug, so we're safe. So I could have Fred he's been using this drug for 2-3 months. And I see him, and he's popping or smoking 5 pills a day. And then Fred says, Bill, here, have a pill. He's like, I use 5 pills. 1 pill ain't going to do nothing to you. And that's where part of the disconnect is. And I think that's where we get people overdosing on this that feel that it's safe because either their friend does it, because this guy used 50 pills. How am I going to die from 1 pill if he uses 50? And it's for those reasons. They've built up a tolerance, and they're prepared to stop an overdose where most kids, they're not. They're experimenting. They're hiding out in a bathroom at a school, trying this, and they're not ready for what comes. So, anyone not love chocolate chip cookies? Raise your hand if you dare. Okay, 1. So this is the best way I have kind of wrapped my mind around to describe how these are made. So who do you think are pressing these fake fentanyl pills? Are they chemists? Do they got degrees? I'm sure one or two might come along that do. For the most part, these pills aren't pressed the way real pharmaceuticals are pressed, right? So that little bit of fentanyl that I showed you earlier next to that penny, in a real pharmaceutical pill, there's a process where that's all spread out throughout the pill. So you take half a pill, you're getting half the dose, right? So for people that make chocolate chip cookies or just love to eat them or whatever. So this is a boring chocolate chip cookie for someone that loves chocolate chip cookies, right? But it's a good example of how someone might make chocolate chip cookies. They didn't just put the chocolate chips on that side. They threw it all in a bowl, and that's just kind of where the chocolate chips kind of fell. And then you got this one who, that's amazing, right? I want a glass of milk just looking at it. But again, there's no rhyme or reason to where the chocolate chips fell. And then you got this one here that, if you hate raisins in your cookies or nuts or something like that, this is a dangerous cookie to eat, right? It's like, hey, have this cookie. I swear it's chocolate chip, trust your friend or not. This is the best example of what this drug is, how it's produced. Talk a little bit in a minute, but we just seized a fentanyl press here in Clark County. A couple folks had a whole bunch of stuff. We're throwing it just like in that first video you saw, and it's just pumping pills out one after another. They add it. They do their best to be a chemist with no degree on, well, I should only add this much fentanyl to this much acetaminophen and this kind of binder. And they're just kind of doing, well, here, this guy, the Cookie Monster thing. They're just kind of, that should be good. And what's happened is, and we saw it once, a person took half a pill. They're like, I'm going to be safe about this. They took half a pill. Nothing happened. They're like, that was kind of boring. Took the other half and died right in front of their husband. One pill. And it's because of a couple different reasons. But that's a danger. The fentanyl might be strong on one side and might be less on the other. You could have one pill that's just packed with fentanyl, and you have no idea. I'm in no way saying that the Cookie Monster is a drug addict either. That's not the intent of that slide. It's just that it was funny. So I could be the only one that thinks this, but when I saw this drug, the first thing I thought was fun. It's colorful. I think happy. What do you think this drug does? Guy on the bench. So I haven't met anyone that shoots up fentanyl yet. So this is depicting a heroin user, but this is what opioids do. How do people die from it? They overdose. So kind of what happens to their body. Yeah, it's the breathing, really. This drug just kind of chills you out. It slows you down. It slows your body down, and it slows your breathing down to a point where you just don't breathe. And you just can't live if you're not breathing, right? Exactly. So when I saw these pills, so we had heard a couple years ago, cartels that are making these, we're going to start making them look like candy. We heard this 2 years ago. But initially I was thinking, okay, candy, so gummy bears, are they going to make them look like something that cops won't key in on? Because to me, that's a bigger danger. I search a car and I come across a bag of gummy bears and I'm like, yeah, it's gummy bears. No, you can put fentanyl in anything. You can put it in anything. So when I first heard that, I'm thinking they're targeting kids. Even this, with these markings, why do you do that? There's no reason to make them colorful like that. There's just not. So I figured, are there kids out there that think this is what it does to them because it looks so fun? when in reality it's the opposite. It slows your breathing down until you quit breathing. And then again, Google, which is my, it's my partner. If he's my partner too, that guy. If you Google fentanyl deaths, especially in this area, it's one after another. I'll show you our record here. I'll show you what we're seizing here, our overdoses here in Clark County. It's just there's no way to deny what's happening. I think we've always we've gone through things in history where, oh, it's the worst drug ever, we'll never recover from it. But when you see what this drug has done to other drugs, we're almost wiping it off the face of the earth because this is so addictive, you'll kind of start to see where this is going, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But one of the things that I like to get out to folks that don't have experience with this or have not thought about it is that controlled substance homicide portion. Because when I was a kid in school, this was the job I always wanted. I went in the Army, got out, got this job, great, right? Well, when I got hired, one of the questions was, have you ever delivered drugs to someone? Have you ever sold drugs to someone? I'm like, no. So that was good for me. So that's one thing. There's certain jobs you can't get if you sell drugs or give drugs, deliver drugs. That's a big deal. The other bigger deal is that you could go to prison for it. And so when we're talking kids in schools, it happens. Kids are selling to kids. Kids are handing off to kids. And yeah, you got to worry about your friend getting hurt. But if you look back at yourself, you got to worry about you ending up in prison. When we arrest fentanyl dealers, we ask them, hey, you know this drug is killing people, right? They're like, yeah. We're like, well, then why are you doing it? I tell you right now, it's kind of shocking how we hear almost the same answer each time as, no one ever cared when they sold it to me. That's the reply we get. They know that what they're selling can kill someone, and they know they risk going to prison for it, and they're like, well, no one cared when they sold it to me. And so you're not getting a whole lot of care from the folks that are out there selling the drug. So this is a national study. There's a nonprofit called Songs for Charlie that was started from some parents who lost their college-age son to fentanyl. So they've done a lot of education across the U.S., and this is a study that they did, and it's showing that age group between 14 to 24 of being the ones that we have to worry about the most overdosing on this drug. Why do you think, because it is kind of crazy, that we still have this age group out here on the drug? If you think about where it starts for a lot of people, that injury, that, whatever, and we're still out here, I'll tell you, heroin, fentanyl, these opioids are a drug like no other. And when I say that, I mean, one, again, that everyone I talk to doesn't want to be on it. They're scared to death of the withdrawals. It's a very hard drug to get off of. But it's dang near a medication. It's very similar to a drug or a pain pill. So people can function. People can have jobs. We've met people whose spouses don't know that they're addicted to this drug. And so out here, these are still folks that either are functional, using the drug that way, or homeless, which also happens, and again have built up quite the tolerance to it. These are some of the seizures here in Clark County. So most recently was this fentanyl pill press. And this is rare. Pill presses in the U.S. Are rare. So the majority of these pills are being produced in Mexico, and they're being brought over the border in various ways. We'd started to hear of some Portland pill presses, and then we partnered with Homeland Security and we end up seizing this pill press here in Washington, here in Clark County, just a few blocks from Hudson Bay High School. This took Washington State Patrol's lab team, a National Guard hazmat team, ecology, to come out and deal with this. It was basically a mobile lab in that trailer. They had been pressing pills for well over a year. The thing was covered in fentanyl powder on the inside, which is why they're all done up the way they are. And these were two guys, one from Battleground, one from Vancouver. They've been arrested, and they're being charged federally. Didn't have chemist degrees. They were just busting out pills in this trailer right down the street from a high school. Throughout this trailer, there was various other binders and stuff that they used. 100,000 pills coming up I-5 into Clark County. And, it's popular for a couple reasons. One is the profit margin, but the other is it's very easy to conceal. It's easy to traffic, it's easy to conceal, it's easy to get up the freeway. And the majority of canines, they're starting to train some, don't alert on this drug. Couple schools of thought, some canine handlers are scared to teach their dog to train because they're scared of the overdose. And we've had dogs that have got into this drug, they've lived, but have overdosed, we've had to bring in. So, but they are starting to teach some dogs, but for now, it's kind of you're kind of lucky here for a little while with the dogs not alerting on some of them. And then signs to look for. So this drug can really be taken two ways. It can be just taken like a pill. Primarily it's smoked. So real pharmaceutical pills, they put a binder in those so that you can't melt them anymore. This is the way that real oxys were smoked years ago before a binder was added to them. So now, obviously, that would be a poor business model to put that binder back in there as the drug dealer. But so they are able to be smoked. This is some of the powder. And when I say fentanyl powder, so if you think when you're looking for this stuff, if you come across something, the powder is almost like sidewalk chalk. It's very hard. So you kind of got to break it up. You crush it down into powder, but in its kind of normal form, it's hard. It's like a chalk, but it's all smoked on tinfoil. So this is a hollowed out pen here. So give me two things a hollowed out pen is good for. Okay, give me three things. That was good. Okay, well, you use it for the drug, so you smoke it. There's another one that's super popular with kids. Spit wads. Yeah. So here's the deal. If you're a parent and you come across this hollowed out pen in your kid's pants or something, you should be asking some questions, because that doesn't work as a pen without the ink in it. But that's a sign. They're either being super naughty in school and shooting spit wads at everyone, or they could be using it to smoke this drug. Straws is another thing. What we most commonly really see are these hollowed out pens. The thing that freaked us out quite a bit here recently are vape pens. We've had two people that have told us, and we took one apart and got the fentanyl out of it, where they're smoking them in vape pens. It's got to be a certain kind of vape pen that I think you can put marijuana in. It's not the liquid type. So that's crazy, right? Because, and we'll talk at the end about it, the easiest way to accidentally overdose on this is in the air. It's not touching it like we kind of always first thought, but it's getting airborne and you inhaling it. So now you've got someone vaping, and I'm not a vapor anymore. I might have tried it once, but I know that vape pens get passed around, and so it's just this constant know who you're talking to, know who you're dealing with, because people are putting fentanyl in their vape pens. It's just, we've seen it, they've told us, it's happening, it's something to be aware of. These kind of baggies, if you see that and falling out of your kid's pants, unless they're like a gem collector or a rock collector or something like that, those are what we commonly see this stuff packaged in. And I can't even, there's other things on here now that I can't keep up with the apps, but pay attention to any kind of pay app. Quite a few of the drug dealers nowadays are taking all of their pay through these apps. So keep an eye on digital payment. Get involved in your kids' apps on their phones. And then here's a lot of the names that you might hear fentanyl and then other drugs referred to as. But blues is a pretty common one. 30s, dirty 30s, Xannies, bars. Ask questions if those are the kind of things you're seeing. And then here is what our caseload has been over the last few years. So again, our unit focuses solely on seizing drugs. So back in 2019, this is what we were doing. 46% of our cases were meth. Less than 30 was heroin. Fentanyl was 4%. We only had a few cases, and actually it took months for us to even know it was fentanyl. That bag of pills we sent off to the lab, it took a couple months to get back for us to go, oh my gosh, that was fentanyl? Okay, so we really didn't even know that we were dealing with fentanyl. Fast forward kind of almost year to date now, you can see what's happened with fentanyl, and it has just progressively done that over the last few years to where it is really all we're doing. I mean, look at heroin here compared to what it was. Yeah. Yes. No, you'll see most things are showing that 2019, 2018 time where it really kind of started hitting the U.S. We had heard about it early in the year in 2019, and it wasn't until close to the end of the year when we came across it. Yeah, and we have, I've only talked to one heroin addict who's stuck with heroin. Literally all the rest of them, when it was first coming out, $30 a pill was expensive, but they were pushing this. They were giving it, to the heroin addicts to get them pushed over to fentanyl. And it 100% worked. It's so rare for us to come across heroin anymore. It's now fentanyl, just because of how strong it is. So this is kind of what our cases have been, and then this is kind of year by year. And then this shows two things that are kind of interesting. So you can kind of see fentanyl is purple, and it goes up while everything else kind of goes down. But this was kind of COVID time as well, right? So two things happened during COVID time to make drugs do that. What do you think that was? No. Huh? Yeah, so those are all very close. Here's what happened. Number one, we didn't get to stay home, so we were still working. We were still trying to get drug dealers. But what happened was borders started getting closed. Shipping routes started getting closed. We started getting told that the precursors that you needed to make the drug was getting too hard to get, is what happened. And so what we saw was incredible. Methamphetamine, which we were seeing sold for about $300 an ounce back at this time, $350 maybe. tripled in price, went through the roof. Why? You couldn't get it. There was very little supply. We knew of folks that were heading down into California to get their supply of 20, 30 pounds of meth to bring back to Clark County. They couldn't get it. Number one, they couldn't get it through the border. And number two, they weren't getting the precursors to make the drug. So it's just an interesting kind of side discussion, but we were still trying. We were still working, but it was so difficult to find drugs. It was kind of nice. But now here's where we're at, and we're kind of slowly climbing. And then, so overdose deaths. A lot of overdoses happen. These are overdose deaths. Couple different things about these statistics. And speaking with our medical examiner, they do not put an age for these deaths. And they do that for some privacy still for the families. Because if you say, 15-year-old male died from fentanyl in Clark County, there's going to be a group of people that can probably pinpoint who that 15-year-old male was. So they're very cautious about that. So these don't have ages attached to them, but this is what we've seen. Anyone can get on the Department of Health website and find these numbers, but this has been our numbers. There's nothing really updated for 2022 right now, but that's exactly what we're seeing with our seizures. So last year we were up to 57. Then if you kind of look at the population of the counties versus the overdoses, we're right there fifth in the state for overdoses and population. And then, so I alluded to Narcan a little bit. We have the ability to test. Someone had asked. So when fentanyl first came out, law enforcement was like, "Oh, hands off. If you look at it wrong, it'll kill you." And that's kind of what we thought for quite some time. Washington State Patrol still has a policy in place where they don't field test drugs they come across. So in order for us to arrest someone and put them in jail for selling a drug, we have to field test a drug. It gives us an idea of the drug they're in possession of. State Patrol still is like, it's too dangerous, we're not doing it. So they've even backed off that far. We did initially, and we've kind of come a little more full circle to where we understand the dangers and we take precautions, but we still want to be able to hold people accountable, so we do field test. We have this laser here that's pretty cool. Doesn't work real great, but it costs a whole lot of money, so that's good. That was a joke. It's not good. It just costs a lot of money. No, what we found, so this laser actually is pretty awesome, but because fentanyl's so small, the laser actually has to hit the drug specifically in order to register. So to actually find it real well in the pill is near impossible, but the powder we've been seizing all comes back is a good test for fentanyl. So we take precautions, but we understand if you come across this drug, obviously don't touch it with bare hands, but there are fentanyl patches that people wear that are meant to absorb in your body. It's not what these pills are. If you have a cut or something, that could hurt you. Soap and water cleans it off. So it is dangerous, but you've got to do some things to really unintentionally overdose on it. And then Narcan, like I said, this is the only thing that'll stop the overdose. If you give this to someone that's not having an overdose from an opioid, it doesn't hurt them. So schools in Washington State, I believe it's over 2,000 students in a high school, have to have Narcan on site. So all the schools I've been to, I've either been or talked to really the majority, if not all, of the school districts in Clark County, all have Narcan, at least at the high school, some in the middle school. Something that I think we've identified, though, in these classes are that they don't have enough. They don't have enough. So kind of what a lot of people think is, okay, well, I've got this thing, you shoot it up their nose, they're overdosing, give it to them, okay, I saved their life. The vast majority of the time it takes several of these doses to actually keep someone out of that overdose. So some schools will have 2 or 4 of these. For one kid, that could be enough, but there was just I actually meant to put it in here. Was it Georgia? There was a school, it might even have been nearby. They had 5 kids at the school overdose. 1 died. The 4 others, they transported and lived, but the 1 died. So you've got 5 kids. I mean, just think about how easy that is, where one kid walks in with a bag of pills or a few pills. They sneak off in the bathroom and they do a few. 2, 4 things of Narcan is not going to be good for that situation. So, you can't have a pallet of it, but I think you need to be thinking multi kind of casualty people in an area. This is the only thing. If you have high risk people at home, kids at home, if you've got that 20-year-old who's staying with you for a little while, you suspect he might be using drugs, this is what you should have at your house. We went to an overdose death the other day. An adult who was hanging out at his parents', had some issues with a girlfriend, was at home, and his dad found him, had no idea that he was using this, knew he'd had in the past, and found his son dead. And I'll tell you that these have been some of the hardest things for us to go to, because like I said, the vast majority have either no idea what they're taking or just aren't prepared for it, and they are just dying from it. So if you have any concern whatsoever, this is where you can get it. You can get it for free. You can jump on that website and order. They'll send you a couple doses. You can go to a pharmacy to buy it, but there's these local places here, Share and the Needle Exchange, you can go to get it. If you, and it goes for schools as well, if you're a parent and, like I said, you find that hollowed out straw, that's a question you should be asking. If you find a Narcan or naloxone in a backpack, so it's legal to have, it's not a controlled substance. If people are high risk, they should have them, but it should lead to some other questions. Why? What is this? Why do you have this? But you, as adults or parents, I grew up. I had a couple older brothers that they went that way, and I went that way, and it would have been the perfect household to have a lot of those around, because they experimented quite a bit. Dominic Tierno, the guy I showed at the beginning of the presentation, put this together. It's called Dead on Arrival. If you jump on YouTube, it's like a 22-minute video that's amazing. He's got like a 7-minute shortened version. But as I reached out to him and got his okay to use a couple of the clips out of it, but as I was looking at it on YouTube, I saw that a high school in California, and I'll back up a little bit. Kids need to know about this drug, okay? They need to know about it. They need to be educated. And it's not enough to say, don't use drugs. It's just, we need to do more than that. We need to treat kids like they are. They're young adults. They have minds. We need to tell them why. Tell them the why behind things. He put this together in a high school in California, put it out to their whole school, and it was kind of cool. And you could probably find that on YouTube as well. But they had 2 students giving they do a thing in the morning where they're kind of a news crew, and okay, later today we'll have a volleyball game, and don't forget to buy your prom tickets, and then they go, and our valley right now has the highest overdose death rate from fentanyl in our county, and they basically go, watch this video, and they played this for their entire high school, and I was like, that's pretty awesome. it's pretty awesome for kids to kind of teach, each other. But
there's always been one main problem with the films that we make, and it's the reason why we try to keep them as real and as relatable as possible. People just so commonly think that it will not happen to them. I'm talking about great people, nice people, cool people, intelligent people with big plans for the future, big potential. Gone because of one choice they didn't know would end their life. Fentanyl is coming for anyone and everyone. So the most important message that I can give to kids, to teens, young adults, anybody, is the same old message we've heard time and time again, and that's to really get serious about not even trying a drug. You see, back when we first started, I was telling kids not to use drugs because you might get hooked, you might get addicted. Now there's not even time for that. Now it's don't try a drug because you might actually not wake up tomorrow. You might actually not get another chance. One choice is all it takes. If you don't believe that, I guarantee you, at this point, there was someone very similar to you who wished they could be here right now to look into the camera and look into your eyes and say, don't do it. Please don't do it. Please, I wish I wouldn't have done it. Don't do it. Don't risk your life. So my question for you is, are you going to listen? Or will it be your family and your friends holding your picture, wishing they could have been there to tell you?
This is my son, Alexander. He died at 14 years old from fentanyl poisoning.
This is our daughter, Jessica. She was 29 years old when she was killed by fentanyl.
This is my daughter, Alex. She was murdered at 20 years old by a drug dealer who sold her a counterfeit pill made of fentanyl.
This is my son, Daniel Joseph Puerta Johnson, killed at the age of 16 by illicit fentanyl.
This is my son.
check, yeah, okay. So to say that our units can keep up with what we're seeing in Clark County is, I'd be lying to you. So even our unit, Vancouver is no longer a part of it. State Patrol doesn't have the staffing. We're down to a few detectives. Some units have 3 or 4 officers that are trying to do some of this proactive work, but we can't stop this. What we can do is try to curb it enough to make it uncomfortable for large groups, drug trafficking organizations, to bring the drug into Clark County. But you know, really where it starts is educating people about the drug, pass it on. You know, this is a very small group. I know it's being live streamed. I've been to several schools, like I said. But the more we talk about it, the more we pass it on, the more kids talk to kids about it. You're at a party and you see this stuff come out. Again, this isn't marijuana we're talking about. You know, this isn't some of those drugs that you can survive an experiment or two. This will kill you the first time you try it for the majority of us. Anyway, that's my name, that's my info. I'll be out of our task force at the end of the year, back to patrol. So if you want to send me questions, feel free. I can pass it on to whoever takes my spot. But are there any questions from you all right now? Yes? No, you know, what's unfortunate, so I don't know. Schools tend to, from what I've seen, unless there's a big issue, they a lot of times will deal with it kind of internally. for various reasons. There was an overdose at a school that I hadn't even heard of until someone close to the school even told me about it. And so I do know the other day that there was some found in a middle school out here. I know that it's constantly found in high schools. I know that there are high schools in Clark County where folks have overdosed on school property and survived. And I also know of, at least one that hasn't survived. So I would assume that it's everywhere, and just kind of know what it looks like, know what to look for. If you see it, then you just tell an adult about it. Yeah, I got a question right before Halloween when I gave this presentation about people packaging it in real candy wrappers, and then sure enough, they caught a group on a plane. I think they were going or coming from California with those Skittle fentanyl in a bunch of candy wrappers. They kind of tried to make it look like candy. Which no one's going to give away a bag full of fentanyl for the most part, but people get kind of careless. And it wouldn't surprise me for someone to accidentally pass something along that they shouldn't be. So just knowing what it looks like, I think, is kind of the most important. Anything else? Yes, sir?
Why is this program being taught at assemblies in high schools, junior highs and high schools?
So I'll tell you that all the school districts have been very receptive to it. I've been similar to this, Battleground, La Center, community events. Washougal just reached out to me to do it in assemblies. This is obviously a long presentation. It's hard to do in a school. I've shortened it, so it's a possibility. I think a lot, so here's the I'm one of 4 people in a unit, so I can't travel around and just give this class to umpteen number of classes. I think there's a way for schools to do it. We've discussed it, but I've yet to have a district say, nope, we don't have that problem, it's not here. I think the majority are just saying, okay, how can we incorporate it? What can we do? So I think that's the way it's going. Washougal possibly being the first. We did go to Skyview High School. I'll tell you that I guess at an assembly they're almost forced to be there, but I've yet to have a parent say I don't want my kid to hear that, but I do think that there will be some of those that don't want their kids to hear it. So I think that's something a school tries to balance. Luckily not my realm, but it is something that I've put together to give to schools, and so I've talked with all the superintendents. I've got communication with all of them, so it's kind of in their court now, but there's been quite a bit of movement on it. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so the question was about those vape pens going through that vapor or whatever and getting that. Personally, I have no idea how vape pens work once that vapor comes out, if there's still any substance in it or not. So I don't know. I would think that there's some risk there. I think the bigger risk is just the sharing of the vape pen, I think, is the larger risk. But I also, ever since we found those 2 guys with them, I've been very hesitant around people that are that are vaping that I don't know or whatever. So I'd have it as a thought in my mind, and then also just keep in mind what the symptoms are of it, because we have seen folks feel like they're overdosing on it unintentionally, and they're like, oh, my heart's gonna pound out of my chest, and I'm running around the room, look at me, I can't stop running, I'm overdosing. And we know that this drug doesn't do that. So if you are feeling, or you see someone just kind of just relaxing and chilling out and almost falling asleep standing up or can't stay awake, kind of that's what you're looking for. So if you start to feel that, we had one deputy have to Narcan himself because he was dealing with a bunch of fentanyl that he had in his car in a confined space, so that's kind of the most dangerous. And that's what he was feeling. He's like, oh my gosh, I just feel I can't stay awake. And another deputy had to come over the radio and tell him to Narcan himself. So, yeah, I would say it's a concern, but I wouldn't necessarily run from everyone with a vape pen. I'd be cautious using, maybe people's vape pens that you don't know, especially. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed the first 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay, we'll go back and we'll just, no, I'm kidding.
Did you discuss how the odor of it?
No, so that's funny because I got that question again, or the other day, and it's the first time I got the question, and I have no idea, thankfully, what it smells like. So I can tell you what weed, cocaine, meth, heroin, I know those smells easily. Yeah.
I know the people that have described it as like a burnt popcorn
Okay.
smell, or even like gross peanut butter burnt kind of smell.
It,
Some weird smells coming from your kids or other people.
So what we're seeing is that
the popcorn smell.
a lot of it depends on the binder and how that binder burns, right? So it's not necessarily the fentanyl that you're smelling, it's going to be like the acetaminophen or whatever binder that they're using. So the smells can be different.
The users have said, the ones we talked to, that the popcorn taste is kind of what they're looking for, so that I would assume that's where that is coming from, but yeah. Yes?
In going after people selling it, what kind of success rate have you had? I know we seize the phone and try to do some back work, or maybe you get a name. How much does it really happen that someone's held accountable for killing somebody?
Oh, for the homicides? It's rare to hold someone accountable for the homicides. So it's a very difficult charge to prove because we have to prove that the drugs they gave to them killed them. So a lot of times that takes an independent witness, which a lot of times we have, a friend, a girlfriend or boyfriend that was with them when they bought it, things like that. Yep, the messages, we've been very successful with that. So the problem comes kind of twofold. One, it takes a couple months to get results back from toxicology results. So you until you really know what killed them, you can't, charge someone for it. So that's kind of a problem that we've run into. But we have one recently where two folks were federally indicted where they sold, it was the one pill that killed the woman here in Clark County. The lady that sold her the pills was arrested, and the lady that sold her the pills was arrested, and they were both being federally charged. We have one right now, we're just waiting for results to come back, and then that person, if in fact, they died from the drug, we have plenty enough to charge them. So our prosecutor has basically said, hey, bring these to us. They want them. So, but they understand it's a very hard crime to prove, but we don't not investigate it because of that. So, yeah, I'd say the majority of the time we don't know. The majority of the time we don't know who sold it to them, or we do, but we can't prove it. So the majority of the time it's hard to hold someone accountable.
I think you mentioned it originally comes from China. Does China have a problem with usage and such, or are we dealing with that country and trying to stop it coming?
No, so not necessarily that what we're seeing is coming from China, but from what we're being told is the precursors, the powder, fentanyl, things of that nature are coming from them to, Mexico, areas like that that are pressing the pills. And it's not, these are all cartels, criminal organizations. It's not that China is setting this, right? It's criminal organizations in the areas who then get it to our criminal organizations here and the U.S. To sell it. So it's partnerships to some extent, yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
For people that couldn't make it today, do you have any recorded or?
I think this was recorded.
This one is being recorded, and it'll be on the Ridgefield Performing Arts Center YouTube channel. You'll be able to find it there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes?
How much Narcan should they have on site? Should it be like in every classroom?
At schools?
It's a big school. If somebody OD'd in one side of the school, yet we only have a couple of Narcans on the other side.
So, yeah, right. The advice that I just recently gave another district was I would want at least 4 doses within, a minute or 2 of each other. So if someone's overdosing, or even some areas, Hawkinson, some smaller areas where the schools are all right next to each other, just some kind of protocol that if there's an overdose happening or suspected, that a staff member grabs their Narcan, comes. The more the merrier. Have as much as you can there. So yeah, I think having 20, 25 doses, 26 doses, they come in pairs, and a high school is probably a decent amount. But again, more than have 50. They're tiny. So it's not like, yeah. Well, and, what do you see in the first aid kits out here? I mean, nothing that's going to save your life. It's a Band-Aid. We have the same in my office. I got a Band-Aid and things like that. So having something that actually will save your life nearby. Some of the schools says, they have nurses that have Narcan on them. But if the nurse isn't there, or if they're in another school, so... Yeah, but I've been very impressed. I've only talked with the high schools. They're all trained in it. They all have it. Even La Center, who isn't required to have it because their student level doesn't reach Washington's mandatory limit, they have it anyway. So, I think it's great, but yeah, we can always be better. And as I gave this class to the nurses, that was one of the things that they kind of walked away with was, yeah, we could probably have more. Yeah. Yes? Well, you can get them for free. I'm sure they're not going to hand you 50 of them. At pharmacies, I'm not sure what they're selling them for, but I do know Washington State still has some programs where you can even get them free from some pharmacies. For a school to get them, I'm sure, they have some money or there's grants. I would assume that getting things. Opioid right now in the U.S. is the big deal. Fentanyl is very much the issue all throughout the U.S., so I would assume there's some grants available, but I don't specifically know. Right, yeah. They're not going to break the bank, that's for sure. Heck, send one student or one teacher to each of these places to get their 2 free. Come back, you could have a lot of Narcan, really. You can order your 2 for free online, so get all your teachers to do it and bring them in.
Gosh, cost isn't prohibitive. There's no reason for the schools not to have it.
Right. Yeah.
I think for reference, the sheriff's office, when we buy ours, don't quote me on it, but I think it's about $22 a dose is what we pay when we buy it for all deputies.
Any other questions? All right. You've been awesome. Thank you very much.